My name is Hank Mercer. I'm 78 years old. I've lived on this land for over 40 years. Every tree here, I planted. Every fence post, I hammered. This ranch isn't just where I live. It's what I've built with my own 2 hands. It's the story of my life written in dirt, sweat, and stubbornness. I've never been a man who asked for much. My late wife, June, used to say I could make a meal out of saltines and coffee, and I'd still say thank you. We raised 1 son together, Evan. I gave him everything I had. We paid for his law school by selling cattle and hay, cutting corners on our own needs so he'd never have to. I remember June standing in the driveway the day we dropped him off at college, wiping tears with a dish towel, proud as all get out. Evan was our pride, our only child. But time changes people. Over the years, his visits became less frequent. He started dressing sharper, talking faster, bringing home a girl named Vanessa who looked at our ranch like it was some sort of abandoned museum. And then one morning, last spring, I was at the county clerk's office, renewing some water rights paperwork. My phone buzzed. It was Evan. His voice was cold. "Dad," he said, "pack your things. I've sold the ranch and the house. You're moving to assisted living tomorrow." Just like that. No conversation, no warning. I paused for a moment, staring at the ink still drying on the papers in front of me. The clerk across the desk looked up, sensing something was off. I said as steady as I could, "I understand, son, but you forgot something important." Silence. Then Evan's voice turned sharp. "What the hell are you talking about, old man?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because at that very moment I was signing the document that would keep this land out of his hands forever. See, I already knew. I already knew he forged my name. Knew he was trying to sell everything my wife and I built without my knowledge or consent. I knew he was drowning in debt, desperate to dig his way out with soil he never tilled and a name he didn't earn. And I knew I wasn't going down without a fight. This is not a story about revenge. It's a story about legacy, about what happens when trust is broken by the very person you once carried on your shoulders, about a father's pain, a son's fall, and what it takes to protect not just land, but the meaning behind it. My name is Hank Mercer, and this is how I stopped my only son from stealing my life. I wasn't born into much. My folks were farmers, hard-working, God-fearing, salt-of-the-earth people. We lived just outside of Enid, Oklahoma, in a 2-bedroom clapboard house that leaned left when the wind blew too hard. My dad worked the same field his father worked, and his father before him. My mom stitched clothes for the neighbors, raised 5 of us on beans, cornbread, and kindness. We didn't have extras, but we had each other. I left school after the 10th grade, not because I couldn't cut it, but because I had to. My older brother got drafted. That left me to help my dad with the land. By the time I turned 20, I was hauling irrigation pipe, mending fences, and walking property lines for local landowners who couldn't do it themselves. That's how I stumbled into land surveying. I took to it naturally. I liked the precision, the quiet, the way numbers and coordinates brought order to chaos. In 1973, I got hired full-time by the state land office in Texas. That job took me across the Panhandle and deep into the hill country. I rode horses in the early years. Then it was a beat-up Ford. I spent more nights in truck beds than I care to count. I'd be out there with my measuring wheel, compass, topographic maps, checking property lines, settling disputes, flagging violations. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest. And it paid enough for me to start saving. In 1979, I met June at a VFW dance in Abilene. She had auburn hair, a sharp wit, and a laugh that could melt granite. She was a teacher, said I smelled like cedar and diesel. I told her that was the cologne of a working man. We got married a year later. In 1982, we bought this ranch, 35 acres west of Kerrville, Texas. It had an old well, a few pecan trees, and a barn that looked like it might collapse if you sneezed too loud. But to us, it was paradise. I rebuilt the barn myself. June painted every room of the house. We planted saplings that today shade the whole driveway. And in 1984, our son Evan was born. He was our everything. I still remember his first steps, right out by the chicken coop. He fell in the mud and laughed like it was the best thing that ever happened. June and I worked hard to give him more than we ever had. We scrimped and saved, sold produce at the weekend market, picked up extra shifts wherever I could find them, all so he could have a proper education, nice clothes, books, a shot at a better life. When Evan got accepted into law school at the University of Texas, I damn near cried. Not because he was leaving, though that hurt, but because we'd done it. We'd lifted our son out of the dirt and given him wings. I remember telling June, "We may be covered in blisters, but that boy's going to wear a suit one day." And he did. But suits don't make a man. Over time, Evan changed. The boy who once sat on my lap to watch sunsets stopped calling altogether. The son who used to help me paint the barn started complaining about the smell of manure. He got fancy, big house, big car, big talk. At first I was proud, then confused. And later, I started to worry. But never, not once, did I imagine that same boy would one day try to take everything I built, lie to my face, and leave me with nothing. Back then, I still believed that blood was thicker than anything. I believed in my son, and maybe in a way that's what made it all hurt even more. After Evan left for college, the house got quiet. Too quiet. June filled the silence with humming. She'd hum while she baked bread, while she weeded the flower beds, while she hung laundry out to dry. I'd catch her sometimes standing still on the porch with that faraway look. "He's doing good," I'd remind her. "That boy's smart. He'll make us proud." And he did in some ways. He finished top of his class in undergrad, got into a good law school, landed a clerkship with a firm in Austin right out the gate. When he passed the bar, he sent us a photo. Gray suit, clean shave, shiny shoes, standing in front of a glass building downtown. I printed it and framed it, hung it right next to the picture of him as a kid, holding a baby goat with mud on his knees. Two sides of the same boy, or so I thought. Evan came home less and less. He'd say he was busy, clients, depositions, out-of-state conferences. When he did visit, he wouldn't stay long. Didn't want to sleep in his old room, said the mattress hurt his back. Started talking about how the ranch was isolated, how cell signal was spotty, how there was nothing to do out here. One year he brought his girlfriend, Vanessa. She was all pearls and polish, the kind of woman who called sweet tea too sugary and asked if our chickens were organic. She didn't unpack her bags. Didn't even come into the kitchen. Spent most of the weekend in the rental car with the AC on, scrolling through her phone. June tried. God knows she did. Made pot roast, baked a peach cobbler, put fresh flowers in the guest room. But Vanessa barely touched her plate. Said she had dietary restrictions. On Sunday morning, when they were getting ready to leave, I heard Vanessa whisper to Evan, "Next time, let's just get a hotel." June's face fell. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. The distance between us wasn't just miles anymore. It was mindsets. But I kept hoping that once Evan settled down, maybe had a couple kids of his own, he'd come around. People change, sure. But I still believed at the core he was that same boy who used to chase frogs by the creek and fall asleep in my lap on the porch swing. We saw less of him after June passed. That was 2011, breast cancer, quick, cruel. I didn't ask him to come out and help with arrangements. He came anyway, but he seemed distant, distracted. Said all the right things, but his eyes were somewhere else. After the funeral, he stood with me by the garden June had planted. "Dad," he said, "you don't have to stay out here anymore. You could sell the place, move closer to the city. Get a nice apartment, somewhere with an elevator and decent coffee. I looked out over the land, her rose bushes, our pecan trees, the fence I'd built with my bare hands. This is decent coffee, I said, lifting the mug she'd given me 30 years earlier. He chuckled, but there was no warmth in it. That was the first time he suggested I sell. It wouldn't be the last. Over the next couple of years, the questions started coming more often. Dad, are you keeping up with the property taxes okay? You sure it's safe being out there all by yourself? Have you ever thought about downsizing? And then came the paperwork talk. Where do you keep the deed? Do you have a will? Who's your power of attorney? At first I brushed it off as concern. After all, I wasn't getting any younger. Maybe he was just trying to be responsible. But something about his tone started to shift. Less gentle, more directed, strategic, like a man with a timeline. Still, I didn't want to believe the worst. He was my son, my only son. Surely he was just looking out for me, right? It was a Sunday afternoon, early spring, the kind of day where the wind smells like wildflowers and the sun's just warm enough to make you want to sit still for a while. I was out by the west fence line, checking on the irrigation when I heard tires crunching over gravel. Evan's car, brand new, sleek, black. The kind of vehicle you wouldn't want to park near a gravel road, let alone drive down one. He stepped out in sunglasses, dress shoes, and a polo shirt that looked like it had never seen sweat. But he wasn't alone. A man got out of the passenger seat, early 40s, tan blazer, designer boots that hadn't seen a single patch of mud. He was carrying a clipboard and a tablet. Dad, Evan said, walking over, this is Reed. He's a friend of mine from Austin, works in commercial real estate. Just wanted to show him around the place. Show him around, I asked, lowering my wrench. For what? Just to get a second opinion. He's got an eye for value. Don't worry, nothing official. Reed gave me a smile that didn't reach his eyes and stuck out his hand. Mr. Mercer, it's a real pleasure. You've got a beautiful property here. Tons of potential. Potential. That word always sets off my alarm bells. I shook his hand, firm and slow. We like it just the way it is. Of course, he said. But he was already scanning the tree line, jotting notes. Evan acted like it was all casual, kept pointing out features like he was giving a tour to a buyer. Creek runs year-round, he told Reed. House is far enough back from the road. Plenty of privacy, Reed replied. Well, water's clean. Just tested last fall, Evan added. They weren't talking like they were admiring the place. They were assessing it. I stayed close. Every time Reed tried to wander off, I'd shift in front of him. He didn't like it, but I didn't care. Evan kept laughing it off. Dad's real protective of the place, he told Reed. Damn right I am. After about 20 minutes, Reed thanked me for my hospitality, which I hadn't offered, and they left. Evan didn't say goodbye. I stood in the driveway watching their car disappear into the dust. I could feel something tightening in my chest. Not anger exactly, not fear. It was a sinking, a slow kind of knowing. That evening, I sat on the porch with my coffee, watching the sun drop behind the hills. The wind was soft, the kind of quiet only a lifetime of land can give you. And for the first time since June died, I felt unwelcome in my own home. Not by the land, not by the house, but by the idea that my own son might be plotting behind my back. The next morning I called him, asked him straight out, "What was that yesterday, Evan? Why bring a realtor out here?" He laughed. "Dad, relax. Reed's just a friend. He does evaluations. It's good to know what your property's worth, isn't it?" "It's worth more to me than anyone could pay." "Exactly," he said. "Which is why it's crazy you're still out there alone." Then came the pitch, subtle, almost soft. "Dad, you're not 20 anymore. The upkeep, the land, the isolation, it's too much. Wouldn't it be better to let go of all that? Get a condo near me and Vanessa. Somewhere with central air and people around your age. I told him I had Zeke, the ranch hand who came by twice a week. I told him my back was still good, my mind still sharp. I told him the land gave me purpose. I'm fine, Evan. He went quiet, then said in a tone I didn't like, You can't live out there forever, Dad. I didn't answer, because in that moment I knew he wasn't just asking anymore. He was making plans, and I'd have to be ready. My father used to say, Don't trust a handshake without a paper trail. Back then, I thought he was just being old-fashioned. A man's word was supposed to mean something. Turns out he was right. A few weeks after Evan brought that realtor around, I stopped by the county recorder's office to file some routine paperwork about fencing along the south lot. Lacey was working the front desk. Same Lacey who used to babysit Evan when he was little. She still called me Mr. Mercer, even though I told her not to years ago. Let me pull up your file real quick, she said. I leaned on the counter, made some small talk, until I saw her face change. Her fingers froze above the keyboard. She looked up at me slowly. Mr. Mercer, did you come in a few weeks ago to sign a power of attorney? I straightened up. No. Why? She turned her screen toward me. There it was. A scanned document with my name at the bottom, my signature, or something damn close. A general power of attorney, notarized in Austin, giving Evan Mercer full legal authority to act on my behalf. Banking, property, real estate, healthcare decisions, you name it. This was filed 2 weeks ago, she said quietly, and it's been used. I felt like the air had been punched out of my chest. Used? Yeah. There's a pending contract, sale of land, a large parcel. Sounds like it might be your ranch. I gripped the edge of the counter. Can you print it? I probably shouldn't. Lacey. She nodded. 20 minutes later, I sat on the bench outside the courthouse, holding the proof in my hands. A fake signature that looked almost perfect. Almost. I've been writing my name the same way since 1962. I know the slant of my H. I know where I curl the bottom of my M. Whoever forged it studied me real close, but it wasn't me, and that made it criminal. I called Mitch Yarrow, the retired lawyer who used to be my neighbor back in the 90s. He came out to the ranch that evening, sat with me on the porch, while I laid everything out in front of him. Mitch didn't interrupt, didn't say, I told you so. When I finished, he nodded. This is forgery, Hank. Fraud. Unauthorized sale of real estate. Depending on how deep it goes, it could be federal. I don't want to put my son in prison, Mitch. I get that, but you can't let this slide. If he sells the property and disappears with the money, you may never see a dime of it. You might even be evicted from your own home. You have to act now. So we did. First thing the next morning, we filed an emergency injunction to freeze any transactions related to the ranch. Mitch drafted a formal letter to the buyer's attorney, notifying them of the forgery and that any pending agreement was invalid and unlawful. We also reported the forged document to the Notary Fraud Division in Austin. The paper trail was working in our favor now. That evening, I opened up my old filing cabinet and pulled out everything: deeds, insurance, medical records, bank statements. I sat at the dining room table until midnight, labeling folders, putting everything in order. I was tired. My joints ached. My back was on fire. But I wasn't doing it for comfort. I was doing it because I had to protect what I'd built. You spend your whole life working for something, brick by brick, fence post by fence post. Then one stroke of a pen by someone you raised can wipe it all away. I never thought I'd be on the receiving end of a betrayal like that. Not from a stranger, not from some corporation, but from my own son. That night, I stood out by the old oak tree, the one June and I planted our first spring on the ranch. I looked up at the stars and said out loud, You always told me to be prepared, June. Well, Looks like you were right again. And I made myself a promise. No matter what Evan tried next, I was going to be ready for him. 2 days after we froze the transaction, Mitch called me at sunrise. "You might want to sit down for this," he said. A real estate firm out of San Antonio had already wired a down payment, 30% of the sale, into a joint escrow account under Evan's name and mine. Except I hadn't opened any escrow account. Mitch confirmed. Evan signed for both parties using that forged power of attorney. The buyer thinks the deal's clean. They think you're on board. That wasn't just shady anymore. That was full-blown fraud. I felt the blood rush to my face. My hands started to shake, not out of fear, but fury. My son didn't just plan to steal from me. He was already halfway through doing it. "What happens if I hadn't caught it?" I asked. "You'd wake up one morning and the ranch wouldn't be yours anymore. They'd have a title deed, a check in Evan's pocket, and all the legal documents to back it up." I stood at the sink, staring out at the pasture. The horses were grazing like nothing had changed, but everything had. Evan wasn't just trying to push me into retirement. He wasn't concerned. He was looking at my legacy like a bank account. I thought back to all the conversations, his sudden calls asking about my health, the questions about my will, the realtor friend wandering around my property. It all clicked. He'd been grooming me for this, making me feel old, alone, vulnerable. That night, I walked into the barn and sat by June's old potting bench, the one she used for her tomatoes. I hadn't touched it in years. Still smelled like earth and mint. I could almost hear her voice. "Be still, Hank. Think before you act." That's what I did. I made a list of everything I needed to do to lock down this property. I called my bank and moved my savings to a private account with no co-signers. I installed a lockbox in my office and secured the original deed inside. I hired Zeke, my old ranch hand, to come back full-time, not just to help with the chores, but to be a second pair of eyes. I scheduled an independent appraisal of the land, just in case I ever had to prove its real value in court. And most importantly, I gave Mitch written instructions. If anything happened to me, stroke, accident, hospitalization, no one could act on my behalf without a court order. No more loopholes, no more handshakes, just paper. Clean, clear, unbreakable. That weekend, I got a voicemail from Evan. He sounded casual. "Hey, Dad, just checking in. Hope you're doing well. Listen, I might swing by next week. Got some updates for you. Nothing big. Talk soon." Nothing big. I replayed that message 5 times. The same voice that used to call me Daddy, now trying to sell off my home behind my back. I saved the voicemail, marked it with the date. Every word mattered now. On Sunday morning, I took a walk around the edge of the ranch. Sunrise, breaking over the hills. My boots kicking up dry dirt as I followed the fence line I built 30 years ago. I stopped by the creek, watched the water trickle over the rocks. That creek watered our garden, filled our troughs, cooled our knees in July. And now it was part of a sale agreement that never should have existed. I picked up a smooth, flat stone and skipped it across the water. 5 skips. Then I whispered to no one but the wind. "You're not getting this place, Evan. Not now. Not ever." I wasn't going to let my legacy be cashed in like some investment. I was a landman. I dealt in acres, not shortcuts. And I was just getting started. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember because I was trimming back the mesquite near the cattle gate, same as I'd done every spring for the last 40 years. Zeke was up near the barn, working the fence. The sun had just cleared the hills when I heard tires crunching up the drive. It was Evan's car, again. But this time, he wasn't alone. He stepped out wearing a suit, no smile, no wave. Behind him came 2 people I'd never seen before. 1 man, 1 woman. The man was tall, buttoned up, mid-50s, wore wire-framed glasses and carried a leather folio. The woman was younger, clipboard in hand, dressed like a social worker. Evan adjusted his tie and walked toward me, Dad, he said, these folks are here for a quick evaluation, nothing serious. Evaluation? It's standard. They just want to check in, make sure everything's okay, your mental state, your ability to manage things here. I stared at him. You brought a shrink to the ranch. Don't be dramatic, he said, already walking toward the porch. It's protocol. Just answer their questions. I looked at the man who offered his hand. Dr. Warren Palmer, geriatric psychiatry. I was asked to assess your cognitive function for a potential guardianship proceeding. I didn't shake his hand. Guardianship? Legally, it's called a petition for incapacity, he said, careful with his tone. We've been told there are concerns about your ability to manage property, finances, medical decisions. Who told you that? I asked. Evan cleared his throat. Dad, I've tried to be patient, but you've made it clear you can't manage things anymore. You're isolated, you've been forgetful, you signed over the land and now you're trying to undo it. I didn't sign anything. Exactly, he snapped. You don't even remember. That's when I laughed, not out of humor, but because of how predictable he'd become. I turned to Dr. Palmer. Doctor, would you mind stepping inside? I have something I'd like you to read. I led him into the dining room and pulled out a manila envelope from the top drawer of my desk. Inside was a comprehensive neurocognitive report from Johns Hopkins Memory Center. 4 weeks earlier, on Mitch's advice, I'd gone through a full workup, neurological, psychiatric, geriatric, everything. The conclusion? Subject is cognitively intact, demonstrates no signs of impairment, and is fully capable of managing independent living and legal affairs. Signed, stamped, notarized. I handed it to the doctor. He read in silence, then turned to Evan. You didn't mention he had recent evaluations, Dr. Palmer said. Evan's face started to flush. He probably got someone to fudge the results. He's always been good at playing the part. The social worker stepped back. We weren't informed of any prior assessments. This changes things. Evan's voice rose. He's manipulating all of you. He's not well. I'm trying to protect him. And that's when Zeke came around the corner, followed by Darla, my neighbor from down the road. Behind them was Deputy Cody Wallace, off duty but in uniform pants and a badge clipped to his belt. Everything all right here, Mr. Mercer? Cody asked, his voice calm but sharp. I nodded. These folks are here to check if I'm still in my right mind. Cody raised an eyebrow. Well, unless we've all lost ours, I think the answer's pretty clear. Evan tried again. You're all being taken in. He's manipulating you. He's not safe to be out here alone. Dr. Palmer closed the folder. Mr. Mercer is of sound mind. Unless you have a court order, there's no basis for further evaluation. The social worker tucked her clipboard under her arm. We'll be closing this file. They turned to leave. Evan stood frozen in the middle of the room, jaw tight, fists clenched. I stepped forward and looked him in the eye. You came here to declare me incompetent, but it seems I'm the only one thinking clearly. He didn't say a word, just walked past everyone out the front door. A minute later, the car sped off down the drive, kicking up dust behind it. After they were gone, I sat back in my chair. I was shaking, not with fear, but with sadness. A kind of sadness I wouldn't wish on anyone. It wasn't just about the land or the money. It was about the man I'd raised, the boy I'd once carried on my shoulders, had just tried to strip me of everything, my freedom, my name, my mind. But that day, I didn't lose. I won something bigger, control, clarity, proof. And in that moment, I knew he might come at me again. But next time, I wouldn't just defend myself. I'd be ready to take the whole thing to court if I had to. Because some legacies are worth fighting for, and mine was just getting started. A few days after Evan left the ranch humiliated, the phone calls started. First it was Mary Beth, the pharmacist down in town. Hank, I probably shouldn't even be saying this, but Evan was in here yesterday, said he was worried about your memory, that you were mixing up prescriptions. Is everything okay? Then it was Pastor Wallace. Son, I don't mean to pry, but your boy's been telling folks you might be showing signs of early dementia, that you forgot his name last time he visited, and later, Bert, the mechanic. Hank, your kid's been making rounds in town like he's your power of attorney, said you've been declining and that it's time to put your affairs in order. I thanked each one of them and said nothing, but inside, my blood was boiling. This wasn't about legal paperwork anymore. Evan was trying to poison the well, make me look like some stubborn old man who didn't know which way was up. Not in court, but in the court of public opinion. In a town like this, that can matter more than the law. Every grocery run became a silent interrogation. People looked at me differently, longer, not with pity exactly, but with hesitation, like they didn't know whether to offer help or keep their distance. I saw the doubt in their eyes, that quiet, dangerous kind, the kind that spreads like a crack in a windshield. But I didn't break. I just kept showing up. I went to the farmer's market every Saturday, dropped off tomatoes and squash like I always did, waved to the same folks, paid with exact change. I made sure the town saw me working the land, saw me feeding the animals, fixing the tractor, walking the perimeter of my property. I spoke clearly. I remembered names. I looked people in the eye. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself. I let the truth show itself. Mitch, meanwhile, stayed on the legal front. We filed a formal counterclaim against Evan for attempted fraudulent transfer of property and filed documentation to revoke any future power of attorney rights permanently. We also gathered evidence, timestamps, emails, witness accounts of every suspicious step Evan had taken in the past 6 months, just in case it came to court. And then, we found out he wasn't done. A clerk at the county office, someone new, someone Evan thought he could sway, told Mitch, off the record, that Evan had tried to submit a revised purchase agreement under a different shell company. New name, new business entity, same address, same deception. He's getting desperate, Mitch said. Or sloppy, I replied. Either way, it was clear. Evan hadn't given up. He wasn't just trying to win back control. He was trying to rewrite reality, turn me into a villain, make himself the savior, the image of the loyal son, just trying to do what's best for his aging father. It was manipulative, and it almost worked. Almost. But the one thing Evan forgot? This town had known me longer than he had. They remembered me before the rumors, before the whispering. They remembered me planting pecan trees in '85, rebuilding the school roof after a storm, bringing firewood to folks in the winter. And deep down, they knew. I don't forget names. I don't lose track of things. And I sure as hell don't sign away my life behind my own back. So when the whispers didn't take root, Evan stopped whispering, and he started running. It was a Thursday when the truth finally came knocking. Not with a subpoena, not with a lawyer, but with a phone call, the kind that changes everything. It was Shannon, Evan's assistant, sweet girl, barely 30. She'd met me once, at his office a few years back. "Mr. Mercer," she said, her voice low, nervous. "I know I'm probably crossing a line, but I think you deserve to know what's going on." I stepped outside, sat down on the porch swing, and listened. "Evan's in trouble," she continued. "I don't just mean with you. It's deeper than that." She told me what she'd seen over the past year. Unexplained wire transfers, client funds going missing, loans taken out in the firm's name, private meetings with men who didn't wear suits but carried attitude. "At first," she said, "I thought maybe he was expanding, starting something on the side, but the numbers didn't make sense. He started avoiding calls, ignoring bills. Then a couple of clients showed up furious, saying their settlements were gone, or that checks had bounced. I didn't say a word. I just listened. "Last week," she said, "I overheard him on the phone with someone. He said he needed another week. Said he had land that was almost sold, and once the deal cleared, he'd make it right." That's when it clicked. The forged sale, the urgency, the lies. It wasn't about me. It never was. Evan was drowning, and he was trying to use my ranch as his life raft. Shannon sighed. "Mr. Mercer, I think there's people after him, real people. He's been locking the office door, changing passwords, sleeping there sometimes, and now he's disappeared." "Disappeared? Hasn't shown up in 3 days. Vanessa doesn't know where he is, neither do I. I just thought, I don't know, that you should know." I thanked her, told her to take care of herself. Then I sat there for a long time, staring out at the land I had fought so hard to protect. The fences, the trees, the house June and I had built with our own hands. My son hadn't just betrayed me. He'd betrayed everything he ever stood on. That night, as the sun went down, a car pulled into the driveway. It wasn't Evan. It was Vanessa, and she wasn't alone. My grandkids, Noah, 15, and Sophie, 11, stepped out behind her. She looked like hell. Eyes red, hair pulled back, hands shaking. "I'm sorry to just show up," she said, "but I didn't know where else to go." I brought them inside, got the kids some juice, sat with her in the kitchen, same table where Evan used to eat his cereal as a boy. "He's gone," she said. "Left a note, took our savings, the credit cards, even the jewelry I inherited from my mother." She handed me a crumpled envelope with Evan's handwriting. "Vanessa, I'll fix this. I swear. I just need time." That was it. Then she told me everything. Gambling debts, shady crypto investments, borrowing against the office, private loans from dangerous people. She didn't know how deep it went, but she knew it was bad. "The house in Dallas is in foreclosure," she said, crying. "The firm is under investigation. I think we're going to lose everything, and I don't even know if he's alive." I sat there, quietly, while my son's wife fell apart in front of me, and I realized something painful. She'd been lied to, too. She wasn't a villain. Not now. She was a woman left holding the wreckage, and those kids, my grandkids, they were just caught in the storm. "Vanessa," I said, "there's a house out back, old caretaker's cottage. It's not much, but it's got running water, heat, a roof. You can stay there as long as you need." She looked up, stunned. "After everything Evan did, you're still willing to help us?" "I'm not helping Evan," I said. "I'm helping Noah and Sophie. And you, because whether you knew what he was doing or not, I believe you didn't deserve this." That night, I watched my grandkids fall asleep, in beds I hadn't expected to fill again. And I realized, even when someone burns the bridge, sometimes what's waiting on the other side is worth rebuilding. But as for Evan, he was still out there, somewhere, and the storm he'd caused hadn't passed yet, not by a long shot. The next morning I walked down the hill to the old caretaker's cottage. It had been empty for years. The roof had held through more than a few storms, but the place still smelled like dust and disuse. I opened the windows, let in the air. Zeke and I hauled over a couple of clean mattresses from the barn loft, hooked up the gas line, flushed the pipes. By sundown, the lights were on. The fridge was humming, and Vanessa and the kids had a safe place to sleep. It wasn't glamorous, but it was home for now. That night, as I sat on the porch with a blanket across my knees, I watched Sophie chase fireflies behind the barn, while Noah helped Zeke repair a broken hinge on the gate. It hit me then. This ranch was full again, not with noise or clutter, but with life, with new footsteps on the path to the garden, with laughter that didn't belong to ghosts. Vanessa came and sat beside me, a cup of tea in her hands. She looked different. No makeup, no polish. Just tired. Honest. I didn't know how bad it was, she said. I knew Evan was stressed, that he worked too much, spent too much, but I never thought he'd gamble away people's lives. I never thought he'd betray you like this. I nodded, eyes still on the yard. It starts small, I said. A shortcut here, a cover-up there. Before you know it, you're not the person you used to be. She wiped her eyes. What if he never comes back? Then we move on, I said. You raise your kids. I grow old. We build something better than what he left behind. She was quiet for a while. Do you hate him? She asked. I didn't answer right away. I'd been asking myself that for weeks. No, I finally said, but I don't trust him, and I don't owe him anything more than the truth. She nodded. He always said you were too stubborn to let go of the past. Maybe, I said, but some things are worth holding on to. Over the next few days, we all settled into a rhythm. Noah started helping with chores, feeding the chickens, repairing fencing, asking questions about tractors and tools and seedlings. He reminded me of Evan when he was that age, back before the ambition took hold. Sophie took to the garden just like June had. She planted marigolds and helped me pick tomatoes. She told stories while she worked, some made up, some probably true. Vanessa applied for a job at the elementary school, and I kept waking up before the sun, putting on the same boots, the same flannel shirt, and walking the land like I always had. But something had changed. Not the land, not the sky, me. I wasn't alone anymore. The bloodline that tried to steal my life had nearly broken me. But the family that stayed, the one I didn't choose, but who chose me back, they were real. They were here. One night, Noah asked me, Grandpa, are you mad at Dad? I paused. Yeah, I said. A little, but being mad doesn't mean I stopped loving him. It just means I'm waiting for him to start acting like the man I raised. Noah looked down, kicked at a rock. Do you think he ever will? I looked out at the horizon. I think anyone can change, but not everyone wants to. What if he comes back? Then we deal with it, one truth at a time. That night I stood on the porch again. Same swing, same silence. And for the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for the past to come knocking. I was watching the present unfold, and it looked a lot like hope. It was a Saturday morning when the call came. I was standing in the barn, sorting seed trays with Noah, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something in my gut told me to answer. I pressed the phone to my ear, and after a long silence, I heard the voice I hadn't heard in weeks. Dad. It was Evan, but not the Evan I'd grown used to. His voice was different, low, cracked, human. I'm in trouble, he said. Bad trouble. Where are you? A motel outside of Albuquerque. I've been living out of my car. The money's gone. There are people looking for me. I messed up, Dad. I closed the barn door and walked out into the sun where no one could hear me. Your wife and kids are here, I said. They're safe. You left them with nothing. I know. You forged my name. Tried to steal the land I built with my hands. You almost destroyed what your mother and I gave our lives for. Another pause. I know, he said, barely above a whisper. And I don't deserve anything from you, but I don't want to keep running. I want to come home and make it right. Then stop talking, I said. Come home and be ready to face all of it. 2 days later, he showed up. Thinner, pale, eyes sunken, a duffel bag slung over one shoulder. No car, no watch, no suit. Just a man who had burned every bridge he thought would hold him. The kids ran to him. Vanessa froze in the doorway. I stood back. He hugged them hard, apologized over and over, then turned to me. "Dad," he said, "I'm ready." I didn't hug him, but I nodded. And the next morning we drove into town together and walked into the county sheriff's office. Evan turned himself in. Fraud, forgery, misappropriation of funds, false representation. He confessed to all of it. He lost his license to practice law, spent 18 months in a low-security correctional facility. I visited him every 2 weeks, brought photos of the kids, updates on the ranch, a jar of his mother's jam recipe that Vanessa had started making again. The first few visits, he couldn't even look me in the eye. But over time, something changed. He started asking about seedlings, crop rotation, soil quality. He said he'd been reading, studying. "I want to work with my hands, Dad," he said one day. "I think I finally understand why you never left this place." When he got out, he came straight back. Not into the house, but across the creek. On the far side of the property, there was a plot I'd never developed, mostly brush and rock. That's where Evan pitched a tent. Said he didn't want comfort until he'd earned it. And for the next 6 months, that man worked like I'd never seen before. He helped me expand the nursery, built garden beds with Noah, took notes when I explained watering schedules, even repaired the windmill out back. I didn't offer praise. He didn't ask for it. We just worked, and somewhere in that sweat, something started to grow again. Not forgiveness, not yet, but respect. One day I found him sketching out plans for a small cabin. Said he was ready to build something real, with his own hands. I handed him the old tool chest from the barn. "Your grandfather's," I said. "Don't lose these." He didn't say a word, just gripped the handle tight and nodded. It took him 3 months, but he built that cabin. Wood, sweat, blisters and all. Vanessa and the kids moved in, and for the first time in years, there was no tension at the dinner table. Just a family. A bruised one, a slow one, but a family. Evan still carries the weight of what he did. He still gets letters from old clients demanding restitution, still works weekends to pay off what's left of his debts. But every morning he's up before the sun, dirt on his hands, sweat on his brow, and not once has he asked for anything more than the chance to keep going. One evening, as we watched the sun dip behind the pasture, Evan said, "I thought I needed to prove I was successful. Turns out, I just needed to remember what mattered." I looked at the field, at my grandkids, at my son, still broken, still mending. "You're getting there," I said, "one fence post at a time. If you'd asked me 5 years ago what I feared most in this life, I might have said dying alone. But now I know the real fear isn't loneliness. It's being betrayed by someone you die for." When Evan tried to take everything I'd built, it shattered something in me I didn't know could break. Not just trust, not just pride, but the idea that what we give to our children will be honored, not pawned. For a long time, I blamed myself. Wondered what I missed, what I should have taught better, what signs I ignored. But time has a way of sanding down sharp edges. And now, when I look at Evan rebuilding that cabin one nail at a time, when I see Noah helping in the greenhouse, or June drawing the orchard with her pencils in the dirt, I realize something I wish I'd known back when all this started. Legacy isn't something you leave behind. It's something you plant in people. And sometimes it takes a storm to see which roots run deep. Evan will never fully undo what he did, and I'll never forget the sting of that phone call, that forged signature, or the sound of my own son calling me an old fool. But redemption doesn't mean erasing the past. It means building something honest in spite of it. So if you're watching this because you've been betrayed, or because someone you love lost their way, let me tell you this. Don't rush to hate. Protect what's yours, yes. Fight if you have to, because dignity matters. But if life cracks a door open, even just a little, Don't be afraid to leave room for a second chance. Not for their sake, for yours. Because bitterness is a slow poison. But forgiveness, when it's earned, can build something stronger than anger ever could. My name is Hank Mercer. I'm 82 years old. I live on the same land I bought with my wife 4 decades ago. And now I don't just live here alone. I live surrounded by second chances, by scars that became stories, and by a family that may have fallen, but chose to rebuild. That's what legacy really is. Not what we leave behind, but what we survive long enough to pass on right.